Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. European research led by a UK charity investigates whether a network of farm ponds could be used to prevent floods and even top up drought-hit rivers. And
tumbling into your bucket, that golden liquid.
Yes, it's stunning. We filter it and then we just put it into containers and let it do its own fermentation and its own sugars and its own yeast.
Pressing time in one of Gloucestershire's Perry orchards. First, though, while the sugar beet harvest, or campaign as it's known, is now underway, the price for next year's crop has been set, and it is substantially less. Farmers all grow sugar beet for British Sugar. There is no alternative processor, and most farm within a 60-mile radius of the processing plants, which are at 4 sites in eastern England. Those plants produce the silver spoon products we see in the supermarkets. Sugar beet is valued by farmers because it gives the land a break from growing wheat and barley, but it can be difficult to harvest during the winter months. Kit Papworth, the NFU sugar representative, negotiated next year's price.
It's £30 for the first 65% of your contract, and then the rest has to be on a market-linked bonus or on the futures contract, and that market-linked bonus will start at 25. And we recognise that's not going to suit everybody.
That is pretty low, isn't it? How does it compare to previous years?
So 2 years ago, the price was £40 and last year was £33 for that fixed element. So it is a considerable reduction, but we're seeing that in almost every commodity market at the moment, unfortunately. And we know that British Sugar has got more sugar than it really needs. We're seeing too much sugar being stored in the world, and so price is very low. Speculators are in the market. We don't think the UK market is going to pick up a huge amount over the next 12 months.
And so farmers then are being sort of dissuaded from planting sugar beet for next year?
Well,
if the price is low, there'll be less in the ground, won't there?
I think that is almost certainly going to be the result. There'll be less sugar beet grown next season, and farmers hopefully have other alternatives that they can do with that land.
So who is going to be able to grow sugar beet at this price and still make a profit?
So the £25 a tonne is the base for the market-linked bonus, and so we're hoping that the world market price might increase over that time. So hopefully it won't be 25 for that remaining 35%. We hope it'll be closer to 30 or possibly even higher. And you do have the option of going into the futures-linked contract if you feel that there's potential in the market. But yeah, it's certainly not as the price as high as it was the last few years.
You're also offering farmers the possibility of taking a holiday from their contract. How does that work?
If you choose to not grow sugar beet for next season, you can apply for a contract holiday, and if you're in the first 750,000 tonnes, you will get your break from sugar beet and be allowed to grow next year that same tonnage. So there'll be a reduction in the area grown.
David Wheatley, who lives near King's Lynn, says he's decided not to grow sugar beet at all. The price isn't good enough, and he'd lose less money by growing nothing.
The price that British Sugar has offered is nearly 15% less than this year. So I'd have to grow an above average crop in order to either break even or make a profit next year. I'm not going to be signing my contract, and I'm not going to be growing sugar beet next year. You
could take a holiday from your contract for 1 year. Would you consider that?
Yeah, it sounds nice taking a holiday, doesn't it? So, there's a limited number of tonnes that they've made available for growers who want to take a break for a year from growing the crop based on a first come, first served basis. But it doesn't help me plan my crop rotation in any way. And I've got specific machinery related to sugar beet, and that doesn't do anything for the profitability on the rest of the farm if it's just going to sit there doing nothing.
And what are you going to grow instead then?
Although I do have a 35-acre field, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with. And I'm even contemplating the idea of not doing anything with it on the basis of it's going to lose me less than growing sugar beet.
So back to Kit Papworth. Did he feel he had served his NFU members well enough by fixing such a low price?
We worked really hard with British Sugar to negotiate a price which we felt was sustainable in the marketplace and that some growers can make money at. But we recognise it's not going to suit everybody, and that's why the contract holiday is there, so that you've got the chance to come back into sugar beet growing if you'd like to in the future, and you've got an alternative to sugar beet which is more profitable for next season.
Kit Papworth there, the NFU sugar beet rep. Now, all week we're sampling the best of Britain's beer, cider and perry. As cider is to apples, perry is to pears. And like cider apples, perry pears have been bred over the centuries for pressing rather than eating. The National Collection of Perry Pears contains more than 100 varieties of the fruit, 2 trees of every variety, in a 30-acre orchard in the Gloucestershire village of Hartpury. The location couldn't be more appropriate. The name Hartpury comes from the Saxon word hard peerage, meaning hard pear. And now the perry enthusiasts there have been given an award for their work to preserve the fruit and the drink, as Vernon Harwood found out.
We're right in the middle of rural Gloucestershire. It's a beautiful orchard just here and trees around. And on our right here is the original tree first planted 20 odd years ago.
Jim Chapman has devoted much of his adult life to the humble Perry pear.
If you try and eat a Perry pear, you will spit it out. It's full of tannins and acids. Each of them's got a slight variation, both in when they ripen and the character of it, because the character of each fruit is different.
And with evocative names.
Yes, Merrylegs, Dead Boy, Lullum, which I always think is quite appropriate. Fantastic names.
On this tree, small fruit, still there, not been picked yet, about the size of a ping pong ball.
That's it. This is rather a special tree, this one. A lovely red colour to the fruit, and if you bite into it...
Red flesh?
The flesh is red. I'll proceed to spit out the pear because it's a perry pear, and it makes a lovely pink perry.
Well, Jim's hard work was recently rewarded with a prize, courtesy of CAMRA, the campaign for Real Ale. If you like, the Oscar of the orchard world. Andrea Briers is CAMRA's award coordinator.
The Pomona Award is named after the Roman goddess of apples, which recognises people and groups that have made an outstanding contribution to the promotion of real cider or perry. And it's an opportunity for unsung heroes to be recognised, really. What impressed me was that over the years, many orchards have disappeared, and the work done by the Hartpury Trust is preserving many perry pear varieties for future generations.
We're very honoured to have received that award, and you've actually come at a very excellent time because we're in the process of making some perry.
And Phil Kester is here in the Orchard Centre, hard at work.
We need to crush them down, so we scrap them in a scratter to crush them all down and get the juices out of them.
That sounds a lot like the cider making process. Is there much of a difference between making perry and making cider?
Perry is harder than cider in many different ways, in that pears aren't ripe for very long and they're not very good at blending. But the process itself is exactly the same as cider. The press itself is a cylindrical steel press, and the juice comes pouring out.
And tumbling into your bucket, that golden liquid.
Yes, it's stunning. We filter it, and then we just put it into containers and let it do its own fermentation and its own sugars and its own yeast.
The proof of the pudding, this isn't a pudding, but you know what I mean, is in the tasting.
Sheer nectar.
A bit of lemon, bit of a sherbet bombshell, this one, I think. Beautiful with some cheese.
Well, here's to your next award, and here's to the perry producers of Gloucestershire.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
And cheers to Vernon Harwood as well. It's a familiar idea that batteries store electricity, and now a new Europe-wide project called WaterGrid is encouraging farmers to create ponds as water batteries for storing rainwater to draw on in times of drought. Researchers think they could even be used to top up rivers. In Devon, Will Luke has been capturing rain on his dairy farm.
Over the last 7 years, we've experienced a lot more drier summers across the farm. So what we've done is, with a series of earthworks, we now collect any of the water that runs off the top of the farm and divert it all into this pond behind me. Now this pond is above the farm building, so I can use this water now by gravity feeding it in to give my animals drinking water and also wash water.
Makes you much more resilient to drought.
A lot more resilient to drought, and also more resilient as a business. If we capture the water, we can get more use out of it. Before we built these measures, the water just used to run off. And then once it left the farm, it was no good to me from then on.
That was dairy farmer Will Luke, and you also heard BBC South West's environment correspondent Kirk England. Well, the Water Grid project will run across 13 European countries, and the 22 partners involved are being coordinated by the Westcountry Rivers Trust. I asked the Trust's chief executive, Dr. Lawrence Couldrick, what exactly a water grid is.
The reason why we chose the word smart water grid is because it's similar in its idea to the effectively the electricity grid, with the fact that we have a network of solar panels and batteries that people might have as private individuals, and they use them for their own private benefit, but they can also trade that energy back into the system. And the smart water grid is exactly the same. Instead of batteries, you have ponds. Instead of solar, you have the rain, and the farmer can use that water themselves. But also there's the ability to put that water back into the system, and the grid in our network is the river itself.
How would you do that?
One of the things we're looking at is having close monitoring systems, so we know how much water is in the system at any one moment. They may be systems where they're just purely wanting it for themselves, and it's about farm resilience. There might be other farmers in other areas where they're not too worried about holding the water for themselves, or there might be times when they're quite happy to release it. So we're having conversations with the water company over around why and when they might want to effectively purchase that water, because of the fact that they need it in the river and in the system. And it's just reversing the trend we've had over the last 100+ years of trying to get rid of our water as quickly as possible. But now we're kind of needing to store it for the summer months, when we start seeing things like fish in distress in our rivers.
Would it be possible for a farmer who's built, say, a reservoir or a very large pond system to then take water from there to give it to another farmer? Because that uses an awful lot of energy, doesn't it, to move water?
The difference between a smart water grid for kind of water and an energy grid is energy is hard to store. It's expensive to store, but easy to transmit. Whereas water's the reverse. It's easier to store, but hard to transmit. We need to sort of keep it either on the farm for the farmer or released into the river. I can't see there are going to be many opportunities to transfer it between farmers at this stage.
This is a European-wide project involving 13 different countries. So there must be very different challenges in different parts of the world. Spain, Slovakia, very different problems.
Europe obviously has very different climatic conditions, going from the kind of Atlantic coast, where we get sort of large quantities of rainfall, down into the Mediterranean, where they get very little, almost a tenth of what we get in some of our areas. Some of our partners in Spain, for example, they've had in the 2022 series of droughts, they had to choose between, as a society, agriculture and tourism. And in that situation, tourism won out, and there were reductions in the crop yield for that period. And it just shows you that there are lots of places where we don't have enough. Now, in the UK, the challenge is we always think we have enough rain. It's almost a national psyche that there's more than enough rain. The challenge is climate change means that instead of getting that long, sort of prolonged periods of rain, slowly recharging our systems, we get these long extended dry periods and then sudden extreme rainfall events. And we just can't cope with that volume. It would be like me asking you to store all your year's worth of drinking water in one go.
Dr. Lawrence Couldrick from Westcountry Rivers Trust. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Sarah Swadling. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.